Are you wondering what the heck is all this talk about multi-cloud? Are you thinking about going multi-cloud but want to select it for the right reasons? Then you're going to want to stick around because I'm talking with public cloud leaders and experts around multi-cloud, and is it really worth it? Hi, everyone. My name is John Myer, and this is the Daily Tech Show. Are enterprises adopting a multi-cloud practice, and is it for the right reasons? Before we bring on our next guest, how about you click that like, subscribe, hit the notification button because we have more content on the way. The definition of multi-cloud is when enterprises or companies are utilizing multiple public cloud providers in their services. You know, earlier this week, we spoke with the CEO and co-founder of Babbel Technologies, 𝘳𝘶𝘯𝘴, and she had some interesting point of views, which includes this quote: multi-cloud isn't about what I think it means, but it starts with the customer. What do they think it means? And working backwards. Talk about customer obsessed. Are companies talking to the internal customer, their most valuable resources? Employees from the bottom up approach and not the top down. Also, if you're interested in listening to other public cloud leaders and experts, take a look up here. Okay, folks, rounding out our week of multi-cloud is a good friend of mine, General Manager and VP of Spot by NetApp, an awesome company that I work for, Amiram. Amiram, welcome to the show again, buddy.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure being here with you.
Yes. So, Amiram, I know we're limited on time, so I want to jump right into it real quick. Would you give the audience a little bit about yourself before we get to our topic of multi-cloud?
Amiram here, founder, CEO of Spot.io. Now I lead the Spot by NetApp business unit. Everything cloud, automation, optimization. That's what we do.
All right, you said everything cloud, and our topic of today is multi-cloud. What is your definition of multi-cloud, and is it worth it or not?
You said multi what?
Multi-cloud, multiple clouds.
I don't think there is a multi-cloud.
What? Wait a second. What do you mean?
I mean, I think I've spoken to thousands of organizations in the last 5 years. I've not seen almost even one customer needing something that we always want to aspire or think about as a multi-cloud. Nobody runs their application on 2 different clouds. Nobody does it. Nobody wants to move between clouds because it's cheaper. Nobody wants to move between clouds because it's like Expedia or moving between hotels or booking different car rental cars companies. There isn't multi-cloud. Multi-cloud to me is multiple clouds. Multiple clouds is I can use AWS because my team uses EC2, but I use Google for BigQuery. And usually you would see a very important distinction, a very clear distinction between the type of applications that run across these clouds. So for example, if you have a Kubernetes, you would choose a cloud to run it. You're not going to run your cluster across clouds. It's not going to work networking-wise, security-wise, data-wise. It's just not going to work. So that's my statement about multi-cloud. People would use multiple clouds for use different technologies that other clouds don't have. So you might use virtual desktops on Azure because you have Windows servers, and you might use BigQuery on Google because it's a great service. And you're going to use EC2 because this is where you build most of your applications. So this is multi-cloud to me.
So all right, you threw me for a curveball right away. I love it. That's actually something that hasn't been brought up. But one of the things you did touch on is using multiple cloud providers for the right reasons, not just for the wrong reasons, for their unique services that they offer. You just mentioned it, Google for machine learning, Windows for PC, AWS. You've kind of touched on those aspects. Well, your conversations with companies and enterprises, are they using multiple clouds? Are there a lot of them using multiple clouds, or are they just centering on one cloud provider?
So from the majority, and when I say majority is over 90% of the customers I speak with that use multiple clouds, they usually gravitated on one cloud. And they'll be centered on, for example, AWS. Like 90% of their spend will be AWS. And then about 10% will be coming from other cloud providers because of different services that they want to use. I think this is how we operate at Spot, and this is how NetApp operates. We have one big agreement with one cloud provider, and then another like much smaller agreements with other cloud providers for different services that we run with them. And that's what I see across the majority of customers.
Now, you mentioned spend, the majority of their spend on one cloud provider. I'm going to have to touch on that subject a little bit, only because spend does come into play a little bit. Now, are people, companies selecting one major cloud provider or multiple cloud providers to get the best bang for their buck, volume discount, or just because of their services? I want them to make sure that they select it for the right reason. Let's touch on spend a little bit.
So no doubt that the more volume you have, the better rates you'll get from the cloud providers. But also sometimes because there is competition, which is always good for the market. So, if you run on two different clouds, so you can always compare and you can always raise them to get to a better rate. But I think that still customers, they have so many workloads. And if they want to get more for their money, so they'll put more workloads on one cloud so they can get more benefits from that cloud. So that's what I see normally. But I think the good thing about having multiple clouds is that if something goes sideways, if you're not happy with your cloud provider, so you always have options. And I think this is what's really good. And I think 5 years ago, that was not the case. Right now, there is way more options, more optionability for customers. And it's just great to see that for spend, for security, for high availability. But definitely still, spend is very centered to get more volume discounts.
So here's a question for you. When you're talking about spend, but when I go into like a customer and they say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about multiple clouds. Do you ask them why, or are you trying to really find out their main reason, or are you just suggesting, well, their services? I mean, how do you approach this subject? How do you approach what is the best for the customer?
So you always need to think about what's your problem first before you think about a solution. So sometimes customers have problems that can only be solved with specific type of technologies. And sometimes there is a service at Google that answers this, and sometimes there is only a service for an AWS that answers their problem. So it really led by the problems and challenges as customers are having every day. Second, you see lots of companies acquire different companies. And when you acquire, you're inheriting some legacy stuff, and you're inheriting stuff that other people did. So sometimes you can see a company that is very much centered on cloud A, but they acquired a company that is centered on cloud B. In most cases, you see consolidation because they want to consolidate billing, they want to consolidate discounts, and so on. But that's the main reason. So you have problems and you can solve them with different services, or you're just getting into corporate situations where you have to use different clouds.
You also touched on a couple of things we mentioned in a previous about acquiring a company that's using a different cloud provider. And now you have to adapt, or you have to incorporate that into it. Now you're running a multiple cloud. So basically you didn't pick the environment. You didn't pick the cloud. So you either have to adapt or convert. And in most cases, they adapt, they integrate into it. My question with regards to having multiple cloud providers, isn't that a strain on the internal customers, the resources, your employees? I mean, now you have to learn 2, 3 cloud providers and their technology. What is the approach? I mean, can we ultimately, isn't that really the skill set of the employees?
Yeah, I say 3 different clouds, 3 different languages. You need to learn a new language when you're interacting with a new cloud.
Is there Babbel for that? No, I'm kidding.
So, and the thing is, I think that cloud providers are actually enjoying the fact that they have a unique language with their own unique products, with their own unique features, with their own unique, different connectors between services and stuff. So then when you want to switch, you actually need to learn a new thing. And it's not only about the cost, it's even about the headcount you need to put to work, the people who need to understand that. So I think this is actually in favor of the cloud providers. And the more we have products that are generalizing and making things very much, seamless across stuff like Kubernetes, it's much easier for organizations to make decisions to move between clouds. But reality shows that customers choosing more managed services rather than self-managed stuff. And when they choose managed services, like, a managed database, it's really hard to go back from it. And it's really hard to move cloud, especially if you're using proprietary managed service that is not compatible with any different API that you can port to a different cloud. So cloud providers, in short, cloud providers doing really good job in creating their own languages inside their cloud. So it's going to be kind of difficult to move.
Isn't that creating like what a vendor lock scenario? Because you're utilizing managed services, which is hard to move out of. You're creating your own language, means your own skill set to do it. Does that create a cloud vendor lock per se?
I don't think vendor lock is a bad thing. I don't think if you like the vendor.
You're not the first person to say that, actually. Vendor lock back then, where they locked you into billions of dollars in licensing versus now. You're not the first.
Correct. I don't think a vendor lock is a bad thing as long as the vendor is great and transparent and innovative and moving fast. And it's all about you as the customer, which I think we see the cloud provider is very much like this. I'm just saying, when people talk about multi-cloud, they need to know that there is no multi-cloud.
Just multiple cloud providers.
There are multiple cloud providers.
Yeah.
Use some of their services.
I like that. You definitely provided a unique perspective on it. The first guest I've had on that had, said, sorry, there's no such thing as multi-cloud. By the way, I did define it. There is a Google definition on multi-cloud, but I had to joke a little bit about it. So, I've got to touch on just a couple more things. I know we're running out of time, but really, is there any piece of advice that you would give a company that is thinking about going to multiple cloud providers? What is the one thing that you would sit down and say, think about this first, or what are you doing? And then let them, let it resonate with them.
I think that companies need to centrally manage the decision-making of which service they use. So the CTO or whoever is making the tech decisions should not let this thing be distributed and every team can just pick whatever service they want, whatever database they want, whatever. So I think there should be standards, how people building applications and how people deploying software, how people choosing services. And I think tech companies need to be very much aware of that and very disciplined about that, because there is a very thin line between being organized on the cloud and being really disorganized and just all over the place. So that would be my 2 cents.
So we were talking about before a bottom-up approach and not a top-down approach. What I'm thinking is a bottom-up approach, meaning that your internal customers, your employees are deciding on the services that they would like to utilize, but the top-down from that would be that the CTO says, let's make a standard of those services that we're using. He's not dictating what services, he's just dictating the standard of the services, meaning it's a collaborative effort to standardize a multiple cloud provision environment for their application.
100%. We're putting hundreds, if not thousands of man hours in building CI/CD pipelines, in building platforms for managed compute, for putting security processes in place, for understanding how to optimize stuff. And all the organization need to benefit from that. And if we're spending this money, spending these cycles, and then we're finding ourselves teams just being really geeks on how to deploy stuff, so the company loses.
Yeah, I know an awesome product called Ocean CD for those CI/CD pipelines, by the way. Sorry, I had to do a little plug-in for it. I am working on a video or a demo around it. My last mark here is, you mentioned about having Kubernetes as like one, unique language for all multiple cloud environments. I think there needs to be a tool that could talk to all cloud environments in their native language, and that tool kind of interpret it. So I can just say, hey, deploy out my 3-tier architecture in AWS or Azure with this one click, let it do its thing. I actually think there are a couple, but
Yeah, I wish there was a service to just let you run in the cloud, in every cloud, and deploy your container on some ocean of containers that you can just deploy them and it will just work for you, right?
Yes. I love that little subliminal part there. That's awesome. All right, everybody, remember, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, your notification. We have more awesome content around here. Amiram and I are going to do another one in the upcoming weeks around cost optimization. But is it really cost optimization? There's other benefits around. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Amiram, thank you so much for joining me on the show once again. I really appreciate it. Enjoy yourself and have a good one.
Right on, man. Thank you.
Thank you.